Hey, so how is
Hey,
how is you, Jake? How
not good, apparently.
how is your quality internet connection?
My internet has gone from the normal 100 meg NBN down to a 4 meg NBN, which is not good.
Wow, it's like you've had a, a downgrade. Which I
Yeah,
mean,
just a
st-
tiny little
standard
downgrade.
Australia, like, you don't need fast internet. You need just some copper wires that are rusting to bits. Um, Okie doke. So we're continuing on Pinky's Palace 3 today.
Yes.
Uh, what was going to happen was Jake was going to drive, and I was leisurely just going to do sweet FA.
Yep.
Interact
So
with.
I had everything set up ready to go, and then my internet died.
Yeah, then Jake's internet died. It not enough for the voice to not come through, but man, you wouldn't have been able to watch
It
this stream otherwise.
it became, what's the PC word for disabled?
It was just having some challenges.
It's having challenges. Yeah.
Okay, where is my VMware window?
I
Oh,
can't even bring up the YouTube page.
OBS is vaguely frustrating when it comes to Windows. As soon as you minimize it, it just goes, "Ah, window doesn't exist anymore." So hopefully,
Copper doesn't rust. Optical fiber shouldn't rust either.
no, copper corrodes though.
It does
Also
corrode. Yeah.
gets eaten by mouses, and the
Gets
state
affected by
the state of
water.
internet in Australia is hilarious. We'll leave it at that. We have a
Yeah.
joke for what's the NBN code? They're a comedy at this point. I mean, hopefully someone
Yeah.
creates a sitcom. It's adjusting my mic. Anyway, so now I'm gonna have to get us back to where we were. So just let me jump into the directory that I've got the stuff in. It's Pinky's 3. Cool. And I'll create a shift shift control tab, or maybe it's sorry, shift control T, or maybe it's just control T. Maybe you don't need the shift in there. Opens up extra tabs in your terminal if you're curious, which makes it easier to do
I do
stuff.
Control Shift T.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
So if you remember from last time, I actually shut my Kali all the way down, which is why it is clean. I forgot that I'd done that. I was thinking it was going to be like everything was still open from last time. Oh no, not this again. Oh no, it's found it. Okay, just need to find out. This ping 10. So for me, it was running at 10.10.0.17. Sweet, and it is there. That's good. That's right. It was 8,000, wasn't it? So if you remember,
Yes.
Pinky's Palace last time we looked at this, enumerating around, we found a couple of extra things. So to do this, I need to set up our reverse shell that we had last week, which involves bootstrapping via this. So 41, no, handy thing for running commands you've run before, history, and then exclamation mark and you see the, I don't know why I'm pointing at my screen. I can just use the mouse. See this number here? If you do exclamation mark that, bam, it'll give you that line. And then we hit our fake PHP shell, and then I want to do the socket command we ran, which we ran a bunch. So that is what we need to run locally, not what we need to run on the server. Bear with me while I quickly grab that. This is what happens when we have to change who's doing the streaming, but I can get that pretty quick.
Yep.
Jacob, entertain everyone. Go. That was a mistake. I love how you were
That was a
straight.
big mistake.
Think on your feet,
How's it
boy.
going, Benjamin Franklin? You should be used to our tardiness by now. We're always so
Tardiness.
prepared for these things.
Uh, we
We're
thought we were
always
going to
so
be fine
prepared,
this
but
week.
then we always
Yeah,
end up screwing something up somewhere.
we thought this week would be all good. Actually, some feedback. Are our levels all right?
In
Uh,
this case, it's not my fault. I blame NB Co.
Let's be honest. You could blame most of the world's problems on NBN Co at the moment. Okay, so I've got the thing I need to run. So again, this is the first step to being on the box. Is we have this. Effectively, this is a wrap around a web shell that's available from Exploit DB. Last week we talked a bit about how we were pretty sure it worked. We did originally want to try and write our own thing that would do the same thing, but we never got around to it.
Yeah.
So we're using a utility called SOCAT, which isn't commonly installed on servers, definitely not by default, except for Kali. Think of it as like Netcat on steroids. So, remembering from last week, this is
That's
telling...
basically.
And if you also remember from last week, this server has some IP tables rules which block all outbound connections but allow inbound connections. So effectively, you remember the SYN thing from university? You know, the three-stage kind of handshake? If the first stage happens from inside the server, so something on the server tries to do a sync out, it'll get blocked. So... However, the server
On the
can listen.
reverb.
So what was that?
I don't know how to fix that. Is that something Reese has to fix?
So a bit of reverb is there?
Yeah. I don't know what that means.
No,
I'm not an audio guy.
You just need to be closer to the microphone. That's all. That's what's happening.
It's right in my face. I'll hold it to my face and pretend that I have a fancy mic stand like you.
What it is a natural reverb from the very tiled room he's in. So just
yeah, that's probably true.
Consider it as like boutique audio quality. Anyway, so effectively we're gonna listen on the server. SOCAT will pass everything it gets to Bash. It sets some like TTY settings so that stuff gets passed through properly. And so I will run that. Address already in use. I need to restart the server.
Or it means it's still listening and you can just keep
you know what?
like connect directly to it.
So this one, so 4191. Let me get the exclamation mark actually in there. Should connect us through, and we're on. It's still listening, which means
the tunneling is probably still set up as well.
Sweet. So
because you don't reset your VMs, do you? Like I turn mine off and on every time. This is
running on a server, so I just leave it on all the time. Okay.
Yeah.
So, which is probably not the best. It isn't an isolated subnet on my network, though. I have set that up, so it can't get to the internet, and only my computer can talk to it. So if I go back to our write-up. So effectively, we've ended up with... so we've got our good reverse shell. Not as good as like actual SSH access. I mean, some stuff still doesn't work, but we've got that.
A bind shell, yeah.
We've got a bind shell as opposed to a reverse shell, if you remember that from last week. We also have a few more files here than last week because of the work we were doing the other day. Did we actually get there? No, we hadn't started scraping, had we? So we have this site, and I need to do another forward for... what were the commands to do the forwards again? So SOCAT, like Netcat, SOCAT can also work as a bit of a TCP proxy. So I just need to find where we had that. I found it.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So, because there were two services that only listen locally on the host, one on port 80, which is this one, and one on a very high port, 65334. So if I go to this now, we just get database under development. So, one of the next steps, as we talked about last week, was you've got a thing that's popped up, and effectively you start your enumeration all over again. So you're looking for files and directories, you're looking for vulnerabilities that are injectable in fields, so on and so forth. So I will open up that other one so that we've got both of them. So just to save ourselves some time, we wgetted this. You don't get anything. You see this, which is just an index.html. You see a login.php, which is what this redirects to if you try and just give it some garbage. And as you can see, incorrect username, password, or PIN. And then we get, and you get redirected to another thing if that's all, if your username, password, and PIN are correct, which we'll get to in a bit. Otherwise, we have this one, database under development. The fact database is in all caps is a little bit of a hint, because what we actually now want to do is, well, capitals. If I can spell, we want to search for, I had a Go Buster for this. It was the one SQL back DB. Cool. 8002.
Yes, that's it.
So 4181. 81. So all we're doing is it's a standard Go Buster on that URL. My threads are set to. Gee, I even got rid of -t. -t's the threads, isn't it? So I'm just doing whatever's default. But
Yes, -t is the number of threads.
Notice we're using data text common tables. So this common tables file that comes with SQL map, even though this is an SQL map, for our actual spam. And well, I say spam, I just mean what GoBuster will try and run through. And we'll look at SQL back and DB files, because this is a database. So it might actually have something.
So we're looking for, database backup files.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So, yeah, and finished pretty quickly because that common tables file isn't that big. We've got passwords.db. So we can go and grab that file, or I've already got it. It's this passwords.txt file. But if we have a look at it on the server, .db, and it's just a bunch of passwords. So none of these are usernames, even though it may look like it. Like my first thing when I saw this was, admin and pink pass. Maybe it's username, password, but that's not a username. At least nothing sensible. I mean, you could, I suppose, if you really wanted to. So we've got some passwords, and we've got some. The next step is, okay, what would these passwords be used for? Likely, this is our next step because we found them both at the same time. And luckily for us, It is. Now it's figuring out what users we should try. So we can look at etc password. And that gives us PingSec management, PingSec, and Pinky, and root, for obvious reasons, as potential candidates for users for these passwords. In the database, we have... I saved it here somewhere. I think it was creds.txt.
The dpink.
Nope.
So we had the Drupal MySQL account that we found when we were looking around as www.data.
Yeah, that was pink. So the database one.
That was the dpink one.
Yeah, so DB creds. That's right. So cat DB creds, which I took from the server. So dpink, and then we had the user that was 1010.
So the actual Drupal admin user as well.
Which was pink admin. So they're all
pink admin,
they're all the usernames we've found so far. So 5im usernames.txt. I've added all of those into a file so that we have them, and I've written a Python script as well. It's just code. Let's see. Will it remember everything I had open? No, it does not. Okie dokes. So, open file. Log and try. This is what I called it. So I used burp to have a look at the request. I suppose I could go and fire burp up. I'll leave burp starting up in the background and see where we get to. Okay. Next, start burp, and then ffdev. for Firefox Developer Edition, which is always very handy. Firefox. So I normally have two browsers. One that I set to be able to proxy through Burp, and then the other that I use for normal stuff, so that I'm not constantly trying to switch around. But this is why I get this cert error here. But I don't care about that. We just want to go to 10, 10, 17, 8001. And then in Burp, just need to go intercept off because we don't care about that. So this is us getting this page. We just give it some random spam for the minute. We don't care about that. We just want to get a request. And so if we have a look at the request that it makes to this login.php endpoint, it's a pretty straightforward forms encoding. So just user, pass, pin. Easy done. If I go back to my Python
Easy done. And now we've got all the data we need to try and replicate and brute force these login requests.
Now this script too. So what we're assuming, so one of the assumptions we're making is that we get an error message if our username or password is wrong, and maybe we get a different error message if the username and password are correct, but the PIN is not. So that's the assumption we ran with when we gave this a punt.
Correct. Yep.
As it turns out, as you'll see, it's fairly subtle, but it's still there. So, gosh, caps again. So this login try. So if we have a look, notice, so all this outputs, if I go back to the script briefly, is which user it's testing and the length of the response content. So I'm using requests to make the request to the endpoint, and this resp then is just a response object from this. But the .content attribute is the raw body. There's also .raw, which is a byte object. .content is a string. I think it's a string. Anyway, you do string a length on that, and it's super naive, super simple. But we get 45 for everything except this one. Pink admin and pink pass. And when we actually go and have a look, the difference is the response here, incorrect username or password or PIN. And if I go back to this and give it the correct credentials but a wrong PIN, so it was pink admin and pink pass. No, it's AA pink sec admin. My bad. I got the positions the wrong way around. So it's length and then thing. So we do that. We give it garbage, and we still get that error. But the response is missing the ending paragraph.
The ending
tag.
paragraph tag. Yeah.
So
it's an invisible difference to someone looking at it in a browser.
And it's subtle, but the reality is that websites that do so this is a classic example of like a finding a valid username thing. So having a different error message for incorrect password versus incorrect username or incorrect MFA token or whatever can indicate information to an attacker. And often people don't think in terms of information as value during an attack. They just think, did the attacker manage to get in and steal something? When I mean information, I don't mean customer data or encryption keys or whatever. I mean something that they've learnt from attempting the attack. So in this case, we know the username and password. We just don't know the PIN. So to do that, I could go and adapt this script pretty quickly to spam pins for that username and password combination, but I'd have to add in threading to speed it up. Or alternatively, we can just do it with WFuzz.
So when we were running through this, I used WFuzz for all of this, and Reese wrote his own
my first
quick and dirty WFuzz for the first bit.
I just like writing quick scripts. If I was going to improve this script I wrote, if I was going to improve it, I would make the output prettier. And I would make the I would add threading if we were also going to try and do the pins with this script, because single threaded, when you realize that a 5-digit pin is 100,000 values, even if you take out anything less than 5 digits, that's still 90,000 values. So people who think, oh, if we have an 8-character password, everyone will have to test between 1 and 7. It's like, yeah, but 1 and 7 length takes no time at all. It's the 8 that takes the time. And same with 9. 1 to 8 all of a sudden takes almost none of the share of the time, and 9 takes all the time. It's just counting for you. That's how it works. So the first thing I need to do is we're going to use this tool called Crunch, which I'm assuming is installed on my thing, to generate...
It comes with Kali by default, yeah.
But yeah, all it will do is generate a 5 unit long length password. That's what are the arguments again? One of them is how long it has to
So
be.
the first is how like the minimum length. The second one is the maximum length. So we're saying
okay, cool.
5 minimum, 5 maximum.
And then this is the
and
character.
Then the third set is the character set that you would like to use. And like it's got a lot more arguments to be a lot more complicated than what we're using it for, but it's a really quick and dirty way of building every possible combination of 5-digit pins.
So if I do that, so doing a head, you start at ones and go up, and then because of the order of these, 0 is the last one. So all zeros will show last, I think, with the way you've got this.
Yeah, it does it in the order of the argument that you've passed it in. So yeah.
So now...
Yeah, you don't want to cat it because there'll be 100,000 lines.
Yes. So now, if I go here and do that, I need to change the name of this file and this one because I called it something else. And then pins. So you can give WFuzz different word lists, and the order that you give them, then if you stipulate down here, it'll figure it all out. So I think the 2 and 3 you stick in there tell it which word list to use for that given field. Yep. So
if you add the number in the fuzz.
In my case, I actually want to use I should create files that have a single value in them rather than all of them, because that'll take forever.
Well, you could just completely get rid of the usernames and passes.txt and hard code the username and password as well.
Even better, because in our case we already know the username and password, and this will take forever if we didn't do it like this. So pink admin, which was my first attempt, was to go through every single password and every single pin, and what was it, the maths on it, like 7.2 million combinations, which
I did that with WFuzz as well. That was a lot.
The reality is, if I left my computer there for a few hours, it would have gotten through it all. The other problem too is logs on a server would, at that point, even a blind person might see something's up. Not as passwords, wasn't it? Man. Cat passwords.txt. It's not passwords.txt, is it? It's passes. And it was this AA pingsec admin password. Copy that bad boy. Yep. Go back over here.
And then you'll need to change the pin to just fuzz instead of fuzz with a 3 in it.
All good. WFuzz, pretty easy to use. Just check I need to change the IP as well.
Compared to things like Hydra and other tools, it is.
Yeah. If Jake's audio quality drops, that's just because his internet is garbage. Okay.
Yeah, Teams has completely died, so I'm watching the live stream, so I get a delay.
So if we watch this... Oh, wait a second. No, there's extra arguments we need to add to remove all the ones we don't want to see, because otherwise this is a pain to sort through. I just forgot what they were.
Yeah. You can change it from HH45 to hide the responses instead. So, because we know for this that a successful login doesn't return a 200 response code.
Yeah. HH45.
So you can hide that with, instead of Instead of HH, if you use HC200,
HC.
that should hide all of the 200 response codes.
Yeah, because we want to see a 302. My bad. HC 200. Yes, this is much better.
So initially we did the hide characters because we didn't know that it was a different response code, but now that we know, we can clean it even more by hiding the 200 response code.
Oh, good. Oh, good. It's like I'm listening to you
Then
from
we let that run.
from the bottom of a toilet. It's great.
Really? Is it that bad?
It's just the audio codec for Teams has decided to. That's fine.
You're the same, like you go all robot for me every now and then as well. I think it's my internet more than anything else.
Oh, good. There we go. That's what we want to see. So I can stop this now. So we've got our pin is 55849. So if we go back to our login form, with any luck, so I'll just dump that there. The password, I'll just sneak it from the shift control C and pink admin. Admin. Login to control panel. And would you look at that, we're in. So this should be pretty obvious what it is. By the way, this service so behind the scenes, if you remember from last week, the web server running this site and the database site is Apache, and that was running as the PinkSec user. So we're not www.data anymore. We have escalated. And all we need to do to take advantage of this is, if I jump back to grab the SOCAT command again.
Yeah, so we already have a working bind shell, so we're just going to create a new instance of that, but this time as the PinkSec user instead of www.data.
Yeah, so if I pop here and then bam, and then I just need to run it on a different port, so 1338. What's better than Elite? 1338.
1338.
That was a bad joke, I'm very sorry. That was not a big brain joke. Grab SOCAT. Sweet, and that's what I ran earlier, so 4218. And bam. So now we have a user. And this isn't where user.txt is either, which is the fun bit of this.
No.
I mean, we can check that. ls-la, the home directory, which is where this stuff tends to be. We've got... my bad, I've gone too far. PinkSec. The user's probably Pinky. So there we go. So bash history, there's going to be nothing there because it's set to dev null, which just means, or redirected to dev null. So everything that gets written to bash history really just gets written to dev null. The number of jokes that revolve around dev null, like, when someone's talking to me and it's like that, just going nowhere. I've got a bin folder, a database folder, and a HTML folder. So if you have a look in database, that's, if I think you will find just that before, database under development in the passwords file. HTML was where we just were. So you have a look, we've got this pinkies control panel index.php, which is where you get redirected to, which was the 302. Okie dokes. So we can try and do some enumeration on the box, like trying to find files with sticky bits, you can't search for capabilities because that's not enabled on this box. At the very least, we can't run getcap. So after a bunch of hunting around, what we find is this. So if you go to bin, And it doesn't even require much hunting around. There's this pink sec D, and if we go,
It wasn't much hunting around. We found it quite quickly.
yeah. So if we go into a PS dash aux, we should see actually even better. Pink sec D. My bad. Yes, crap. That's what we want to do. I just had a brain fart. So this thing is running on the server doing something. It doesn't really matter because as far as we found out, if we go and try and run it, pink sec D, it gives us that. Give it that, and it goes flags added. That flags added. Even if you go dash help like it suggests, flags added, dash H. So
it looks like it just randomly it'll just
much.
take whatever user input you put in there.
So if I go and look back in my HTML folder, I've already copied pinksec D. I'll tell you about this in a sec, but we've already found pinksec D. So I've already copied that over to the HTML folder, and then I've then wgetted that over to my Kali instance. Because we have a way of getting stuff off the box, we just don't have an easy way of getting stuff onto the box because we can't wget from the server back out. So if we have a look, I've got libpinksec, which is something that'll show up in a sec, and pinksec D here somewhere there. If you try and run it here, if I can type properly, pinksec D, error while loading shared libraries, libpink.so. So that was pretty simple to find. So just back on the server, find /. So the first argument to find is where in the folder hierarchy do you want to look. Dash name. We want libpinksec.so. And then that. And then you can do a redirection for the errors, but I didn't bother because it shows up at the bottom. There it is. And then I did the same thing. Copied that to the HTML directory and then grabbed it. But even with it, you've got to then do a whole bunch of stuff with LD to register the SO file, which we'll get into the next. There will be a part 3 to this. So we're kind of heading into the home stretch for this one. So
we tried to do... we tried to trigger a buffer overflow when we were messing around with the app on the server, but we sent it a fairly large string and it handled it okay. So that's when we got to the point of copying it to our local box, and we were actually about to start trying to reverse engineer it when we found out that it needed this libpinksec.so. And thinking back to some of our previous streams, we've done sort of shared object injection stuff in the past. So we figured that might be a good
I have an
kind of isolated stream.
I have an active project already. A project that I set up in Ghidra when I was doing this. A project's just a thing where you include binaries and then you can open them. So if we look at PigSec D first, crash data. I guess that was when I shut down Kali. No, I don't care about unsafe changes in this case. I'm sure in some cases you would. I am probably using Ghidra for about 3% of what you can really use it for. It's just a handy way to look at stuff nicely. So in the symbol tree, so we want to find a function. I love how it's just like fun in capitals. We want to look for our main function, which if you remember, you see that's your standard function name for what runs first for something that's actually executable. SO files, they don't have a main function. Okay, well, it's the entry point. That's what I was after. So this takes a couple of parameters. Those are probably the argv. So parameter 1 is going to be the name of the thing that's running, and parameter 2 is then the flag we give it. And we go through. It does a bunch of checks, and then it does a puts. But if we try and actually look at the actual functions that are running. So if I go back to main, so if we have a look, there's a couple of. Come on, there we go. So we've got this PS option and PS opt and PS banner. So these three functions. But if we try and have a look at what any of those do, they don't exist, because what is actually happening is they're dynamically linked. So something's imported from a library. I happen to have gotten the library as well, so we can open that and have a look. Functions. And we've got PS banner and PS opt. So if we have a look at these, they use printf, which made us think, oh, this could be overflowable. But when we gave it the tons and tons and tons of data, it didn't do anything. So this can obviously safely handle that. So they're obviously doing the memory allocation properly, which if you know what you're doing when you're using printf and other overflowable functions, then you're fine, because as long as you're allocating the right amount of memory, nothing bad can happen.
Yeah, they can be used properly and safely. It's just they are the common points of buffer overflows in applications.
Which, for this week, means we've kind of come into land. So the next stage is, if you remember, if you have ever kept up with our streams, this is probably back when we were on Twitch as well. We had
would have been,
yeah. So there was a box that had a similar situation. You had a binary. Oh yeah, one of the things I didn't show, because if we do LA, the sticky bit is set. So this thing runs as PinkSec management. Sorry, is owned by PinkSec management. So with the sticky bit set, we pick up that user's ability to do stuff. So if they have high levels of permissions and we set this thing to give us a shell, then we should have a shell as PinkSec management. So that's the next level of escalation. So how we would do that is you can abuse how dynamic libraries are loaded in Linux. So you can say, hey, don't load the SO file from user lib or lib or wherever. Load it from the same directory, but you have to register the library and then do something else to get it to do it, which is going to be what we show you next week, because we need to go back through our old notes to figure out how we did that last time.
We need to confirm that our theory of the next steps is actually correct. Yeah.
Yes. That's what we're assuming. It's a classic case of, as soon as something is dynamically linked, all you need to do is write your own library that implements the same functions. Those functions could do something else entirely. They just need the same names, so that then our library calls it. It's the same as Python's got something similar with modules and the way it figures out where a module is, and you can trick Python to run your thing instead of someone else's thing, or the correct thing. So that's probably where we'll leave it today. So a bit of a shorter one. Hopefully next week.
Quicker, yeah.
Next week though should be interesting, because this stuff, when I remembered when we did it last time, was actually pretty interesting, diving into how the linker worked, and we can probably do a bit of an explanation.
And
about
that's why we figured it would be a good place to sort of again chop this.
Yeah, Jake's gone super choppy again. So on that note, I might leave you there, guys. Have a good one. Thanks for tuning in.